Good afternoon. Welcome to another Goalline webinar. Today we're going to be talking all about the different ways of networking Goalline sites together. We'll get started in just a moment here as we let some folks get themselves connected. Housekeeping as usual. If you've attended these webinars before, I apologize for repeating the same things. You'll find that you don't have any audio options throughout the webinar, but there is a chat. And if you have any questions as we go, you can go ahead and throw those questions into the chat. As I come across them, I'll either let you know if I'm going to go over that later, or I'll stop and address that question. So as I said, we're talking about networking Goalline sites, and there are various ways to do that. So this is going to cover the three broad types of networking that you can do, and a lot of times we refer to them as tie-ins. So we're going to talk about referee tie-ins, and then registration tie-ins, as well as team tie-ins. And they are three distinct types of tie-ins, and you may or may not find that all three of them work for you and the style and structure of your organization or your region, depending on how you structure yourself geographically. You may find that one or two might work for you, or you may find that only one type of tie-in is really what you need. So we are going to get started first by talking about the referee style tie-in. Referee tie-in, what that means is a separate Goalline site from yours can be scheduling games. And as they schedule those games, the games they create automatically populate in your site, in your referee tools, so that you can assign the referees there. The main use case for that is going to be what we call centralized assigning. And there's lots of examples of different sports and different provinces in Canada, as well as different states in the US, that deal with centralized assigning. The benefit, like a lot of the time, is felt by the referees themselves, the officials themselves, because with centralized assigning, an official who officiates with more than one association or across multiple leagues, if each one of those leagues is using a separate Goalline site, and they're each using their own referee assigning system attached to that site, those referees have to be in multiple Goalline sites and have multiple logins, and they're also having to maintain their availability across all of those different associations. So centralized assigning really benefits the officials themselves, because when they log in as an official, they can set their availability once, and when they go in to confirm or decline games or use the up for grabs tool, view their payroll, everything like that, it's all going to be done for them through one single referee control panel, as opposed to them having to maintain multiple. For those that do multiple, and you're having to log in, accept a game over here, and then go and update your availability accordingly on the other site, it really eliminates a lot of that, because your availability is set once. And when assigners are assigning you, even if those assigners don't have visibility across all of the leagues that you're officiating in, your assigners are either going to see you as available or not, regardless of which leagues you have been assigned to. So there's a really big benefit there. When you go to create an official, when you have, or edit an official, when you have a referee tie-in, it's going to look something like this on the side, where you have your qualifications on the right-hand side are going to list all of the different organizations that push games into that site. So the example that we're looking at here is a real example where we have the Hockey Nova Scotia officiating program and all of the divisions that are applicable directly there. And then we also have organizations that are on separate Goalline websites that are pushing their schedules here as well. So we can see the divisions from other Goalline sites, and we can properly qualify those officials for whatever positions in whatever divisions across all of those different associations that they're qualified for. And once you have this set, the officials assigning section is going to read that the same way as it would if it was only taking from one association. So if we look at the leagues that exist on the site that we're on right now, it's only going to include these HNSOP divisions. These other divisions are managed elsewhere, but they're pushing the games so that we can set assigner permissions to assign these games. We can set official qualifications so that referees are seen as qualified. And then when it comes to payroll and billing reports that are available from the officiating side of things, they can be done by grouping of these various leagues. So the way this looks a little bit more in action is when you get to the assigning screen. I'm going to see if I can show us that here. So when you look at your assigning screen for whatever date range it happens to be that you're looking at, the divisions that are going to be listed here are going to be all of the divisions that you have assigning permission for. And as you can see here, this could be across all of those different associations that are pushing games to one central area. It's also important to note that Goalline has absolutely no restrictions whatsoever on the number of administrators who can access the site. Assigners who assign games through this tool are website administrators, and you can have literally 1,000 of them if you need to. So if you have a separate assigner for each and every division across all of these organizations, you are perfectly capable of setting them up. You set them up as an assigner with permission to edit referee assignments. And once they have that permission, you're going to find there's an additional tool for setting assigning permissions specific to that assigner. And this allows you to do the usual stuff, which is to provide them with overrides or not. I always like to point out when I'm talking about officials, the overrides have really good use cases. Availability and rink or venue preference are typically, most assigners should have those override options. But the referee level and master override, these tend to be pretty limited. So you may or may not find that you have access to those particular overrides. But the benefit here is that you are able to say an official who's qualified but not ready to go to the rink that I'm trying to send them to, I do have an option to use an override. When it comes to the league permissions that we see, what this is doing is saying this assigner is going to be able to assign all of these positions when it's these divisions. But they're only able to assign this position in all of these other divisions. And where there's no checkbox at all, it means this won't even show up in their list. So I'm only going to see the divisions in my list of officiating when I'm editing official assignments. I'm only going to see what's relevant to me as an assigner. So that's kind of the first step to understanding the way these permissions work. Then we can see here that we can assign permissions to the other associations that are pushing games into this centralized assigning system. And you can have permission to assign as much or as little as your role requires you to have. As we get down to the bottom here, so we can see there's all kinds of games and schedules that are able to push into this particular site. As we look down, there's also an added layer of assigning zone. This becomes particularly important when some of these leagues span across a larger geography. So the referee tie-in provides additional layers of being able to assign in one centralized system. Your referees only have to have one login with one set of availabilities, but your officials assigners can be as granular as they would normally be, as if they were assigning within their own association. So if this assigner has permission to assign referees to the Nova Scotia Junior Hockey League, as an example here, they can have that permission, and they can have that permission for all of the assigning zones or just specific zones. So if they're only supposed to assign this when the JHL, if the games happen to be played in a venue that's in Cape Breton, you can restrict that assigning permission so that all of these permissions here that they have to assign are available to them, but only when the games are in a venue in the assigning zone you've provided. And the benefit here is you can have 6 or 7 different NSJHL assigners who are responsible for their own region's assignment, but they're still logging into the same place, and they're able to select from the same pool of officials, and they're never going to step on the toes of the other assigner. So neither, if I have 2 assigners with NSJHL permissions, one's in Cape Breton and one's in Central, the Cape Breton assigner will never see the games that are being assigned in Central because they don't have that listed as their assigning zone. So it provides a really nice way for you to create assigning permissions, as many assigners as you need, with the permission to assign a league even if that league is participating in multiple zones across your larger geography. So the officials tie-in is a really, really strong way to create a centralized assigning system. A lot of provinces, even in the sport of hockey, that's typically been referees are typically assigned at kind of the association level when it comes to hockey. That is starting to change across the country, and we're seeing that in the U.S. as well. In states, it's there people are finding that it's just much easier and more streamlined to manage things out of one centralized system. The other benefit there is that your summaries of officials' assignments and how those officials are being used and evaluation tools are also centralized when you're able to have everything in one central system. I'm going to switch over to my demo site now just to take a look at some of those reports and how you can break down the way that some of those reports are going to work. There is a referee assigner report. This is particularly important for organizations that really want to make sure that their assigners are following procedures and policies that are applicable to their job. So if I take a look at, let's look at Goalline here as the assigner and take a look at a nice long date range. So we'll just go back to last year. Why not? And I just want to view a summary of the assigning that's been done by this assigner. So if I look here, a total of 16 games have been edited, 59 positions have been set. Up for grabs was used 5 times. The override for availability was used 5 times. And the master override was used 11 times for a total of 16 overrides. This is a really great report to take a look at, because when you're looking at this, you can see whether or not all kinds of different overrides are being used. Most of the time, associations that assign officials will have policies and procedures that really you shouldn't have to use a whole lot of overrides. So it's a way for you to audit the officials' assigners to make sure that they're following the rules. And I always use the term equitable assigning to make sure that they're doing equitable assigning and not giving games to, a preferred set of officials. Because if you're using overrides, it means that you are selecting someone who didn't actually show up as available based on the criteria of qualifications, availability, and potentially venue preference if you happen to be using that specific layer of preferences. That's an optional one. You don't have to be using venue preferences for your officials. So this assigners report is one way for you to kind of get that overall look. And the benefit here is that it doesn't matter which leagues or associations it's assigning for, because all of the assignments are taking place here in this site. Another report that's great for that same reason is going to be your payroll summaries. Your payroll summary, when you are using the centralized side of things, is going to have some added layers for you so that you can not just do a payroll summary, but you can base it based on the division, the region that the referees themselves belong to, or the region that the venue belongs to. And these layers here may not be important to you depending on how you run your payroll, but the reason we provide these layers is that it may be from time to time the association that manages the venue might be responsible for sending the payroll to those referees who participated in games in their region. But it may just be that whatever region the referee belongs to is responsible for paying them. So you can use these 2 criteria as restrictive criteria, or you can not make any selections here and it's just going to go for the date range and the divisions that you've selected. Again, all is going to be the default when you're selecting this, so it's not going to restrict anything here. So when you look at your referee date range, you're going to be seeing, I'm just going to go, actually, let's go back to last year too. So we'll look there. I can make a selection of basically all referees, everyone except for expired referees, or I can look at one specific referee at a time. Cash games are also something that you can exclude or include in here, and this is regardless of the region. And then your referee status is going to be either the active ones, the expired ones, or even deleted ones. I often get asked, why do we include these in payroll summaries? And my answer is, if they expired today, but they did a game yesterday, you still have to pay them. So we do want to make sure that deleted and expired referees can be included in payroll summaries, so that even if they're deleted or expired now, that they're still going to be able to get paid for the games that they did when they were still active officials. So when we view this summary here, I'll just do a quick look here just to show that it's going to include all the officials regardless of what region that they're from. So every official is going to be listed in here, and you can export the summary summary or the details. The details is actually going to only really summarize the difference in the alterations. So in either case of the export or the details, it is one line in that file per official, but the details is going to include that the alterations were specifically for an assigning fee or travel pay or a miscellaneous pay adjustment, such as we see down here. So that is about the referee tie-in. Referee tie-ins are really, really beneficial. They're easy to do as well. It's something that our support team can initiate. We do require permission from all of the associations that are involved. So we would definitely need permission from the association that you want to send games to in order to have them assigned over there. And if you are the referee association and you want games from another Goalline site to push to you, we just need permission from that other association to go ahead and initiate that tie-in, but the support team can initiate that for you with a call or an email to the support team. Excuse me. So that is our officials tie-in, the ref tie-in. So you send games to a central or separate Goalline site, and the permissions that are added as assigner permissions and the qualifications added as referee qualifications automatically show up. A few other benefits that I can't even believe I forgot to mention right off the top. I always joke about this as well, having come from a referee background. I refereed soccer for 26 years. And one thing that often happens is when schedule changes occur, a lot of times the referees are forgotten. We're the last people tell. And I have definitely showed up to fields to officiate only to find out that the game was canceled or rescheduled and nobody notified me. Goalline takes care of that. If you have a referee tie-in place and you've assigned officials to a game, there's two things that are going to happen. One is that game cannot be deleted from the Goalline system until the referees have been entirely removed from the game, which can only happen through the Edit Referee Assignments tool. So that adds a layer of protection. You can certainly cancel a game, set it to be rescheduled, rain it out using the tools that are available for the game status. And that automatically notifies the assigner who assigned the officials and the officials who are assigned to the game through the Goalline system will send them an automatic notification that there has been a change or that their game has been canceled. It cannot be deleted because we want to maintain the history of that game so that when it's time to reschedule it, if you can, you'll be able to reassign the same officials because the history will still be there to find out who was originally assigned to that game before it got canceled. So that is one of the huge, huge benefits of having the referee tie-in in place. It's automatically going to notify everyone who needs to know that that game has been changed or canceled. The changes that result in a game change notification and the releasing of officials are going to be anything that involves the date, the time, and the venue, because those are all preferences that go into whether or not you might still be available for that game. And you also may have other existing conflicts. So we never want to assume that that official is able to immediately just go ahead and be assigned to that new game. That is, again, one of the reasons that we do have those awesome override options. So you could do that and reassign those officials. Another particularly fun feature that exists within Goalline when you are using the centralized assigning platform is what we call game change requests. This is a feature that was developed specifically for the purpose of centralized assigning so that when a game change needs to happen, it's not changed automatically and just showing up on the schedule as the new date, time, or venue. What happens with game change requests is when I try to change the venue or the date or the time, it's going to request it and it's going to show up in the game change request tool for my centralized assigning system. I don't have any pending requests on file here. I should have probably set one up. But what happens there is I do get a choice at that time. So I can say, I'm going to accept that game change, and I get a choice with what happens to the referees so that they're not automatically released. So I'm able to override their preferences and keep them confirmed. I'm able to keep them pending so that they can reconfirm that they're okay with the new date, time, or venue or whatever change was made, or I can unassign them entirely and then just deal with it again, depending on what happens. If the game's several weeks away, maybe you want to just reassign them in the regular course of your assigning, depending on the timing that you tend to do your assignments. So the game change request tool, it is one that it doesn't come automatically with the officiating system, but it can be requested and it can be turned on by our goal line support team. And as I said, it does have that impact that when games are being sent to your official system, that games cannot be changed without approval, and they can't be deleted at all without the referees themselves being released from that game. And I apologize again for using the word referee a lot. I'm trying to use official, but I know there's umpires and judges and officials and whatnot. So we're all just one big old catch-all here. So that is the referee tie-in. If there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you have any follow-up questions based on how you're currently using Goalline, definitely feel free to reach out to the support team. They can be reached at goallinesupport@stacksports.com. You can also check out goalline.ca and check out the support portal. We've got our live chat and our phone number there. There has been a recent change to the hours of support. It was previously 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. It's now 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday. So just keep that in mind for live chat and phone support, but you can email or submit a case through the support center on goalline.ca anytime. The next type of tie-in that we're going to look at is the registration tie-in, or it's more of an organizational tie-in that pushes registration information. It does not push and pull game information for the purpose of schedules or for assigning officials. And so it's something that you may want to also do in addition to sending games to a centralized assigning site. But with the registration tie-in, the way that that works is you can be tied in so that all of the registration activity that you do on your site automatically pushes up. And the benefit there is, of course, with governing bodies. If you want your governing body to receive information about your up-to-date, current, in real-time registration information, having a registration tie-in makes it so that you don't ever have to worry about exporting or sending a report and sharing information, because the organization you share it with can report on it all by themselves. So I have a setup where Trevor's demo site is set up to push registration information to my site. And it makes no difference to him on this site. When I go to individual registration forms, I'm able to manage those forms the same way I always would. The benefit that might end up being beneficial here is that the governing body organization that you're pushing your information to can also push things to your forms. It doesn't have to be the case. This form just looks like it's a little out of date. I'm just going to ignore that. So the governing body could append information either to the top of a form as information that should always be present, or policies can be automatically populated with the governing body waiver in addition to the waiver of the organization itself. So if I go on my site and I create a master policy, and I want that master policy to show up on all of the child organizations that are tied into me, I can do that. So I'm going to go back to my demo site and let's take a look at that. So individual registration forms over here, I have this option here for master policy. So I can do master policies that apply to individual registration forms or team registration forms. So this is a master waiver policy. I can put that in. I don't have to do a master policy for every section, but I can do one for all of these sections that are available here. I can choose that all of these will have it, or only the forms that we push down. So another organizational tie-in is that I can create a form and just push it so that my child organizations don't actually have to create a form. They can just edit the one that I push to them. We'll keep it simple for today and talk about locking that child form to this master policy. So when I save this change, it's been saved. And now when I go back over, I know I'm clicking around a little fast here. If I go back in here and just refresh. So we can see here that the following text will be appended to the waiver from my demo site, and the waiver is going to say this is a master waiver policy. So now, in addition to your local waiver and policy information that you want or need your registrants to agree to and read, you can have your governing bodies policy information here as well. What this can also do is just eliminate any kind of confusion or additional questions that may come when it comes to having registered with an association that is responsible to a governing body. When that governing body is able to display their policies directly on this form, you're able to read and have that information be completely transparent. So if I had included additional information in, say, the privacy policy or the refund policy, it would also be showing that appended master policy. I only included the waiver, so that's the only one that we're going to see. So the registrants would see this waiver in addition to this, and their overall consent is going to apply to any and all of the policies that are listed on this screen. So that's sort of the first layer of how that registration tie-in starts to appear. And then as Trevor's demo site starts registering participants, we can go and search for those participants. So taking a look here just to see what date range we want to look at. So let's look at 2022, the general registration. Take that back a few months. I'm not sure when that form opened. We'll select all of our programs and do a little search. When I search here, I'm going to be getting the results based on the criteria I just entered. So all the folks who registered for these programs within the date range that I selected. And as usual, you have your options to email either the players or the parents or both the player and parent. You can export these details or the registration summary from here as well, and we can see all of our details. You can edit the individual player profiles and see that registration information. And this is where I could go in and do whatever I might need to do, like recording a payment or providing a refund or resending confirmation emails, whatever it is I need to do, I can come in and see this information. Now, as the governing body, I can go and do the same thing. So if I go to my people tools on a completely different Goalline site that's receiving Trevor's registration information, I can go to find players. And when I go to look through the list of registration forms, in addition to the registration forms on this site directly, as I scroll down, I can see all the other sites that are tied into me. So I can select that same 2022 Nova Scotia General Registration form that we looked at on Trevor's demo site directly, and I can do exactly the same search, and I get exactly the same results. And I can even do the same things. I can export the data. I can email from those search results as well. So I'm able to do all the same things and verify registration information and know that these players are properly and currently registered. There are some layers of permission that a user may or may not be able to see the financial information related to the registration activity. So whether or not it is paid in full and how much they actually paid. So we do have separate permissions that can be broken out so that that information is not available to the governing body. In this case, they are available. The only difference, as you may notice here, is that instead of seeing a button that allows me to edit this profile, I can't edit it because this profile doesn't really exist here. This is just information that's pushed up to me for visibility and reporting purposes. So if I go to view this profile, it is going to show me almost exactly the same thing as what we were looking at. And I can see I can choose to do a receipt here, but you'll notice that I don't have an option to provide a refund or record a payment because the system understands this was not your registration to deal with. This was a registration that occurred on Trevor Scott's Goalline demo site. It's very clearly not a registration that occurred directly with me. So I'm not able to do a whole lot else with this player profile. I'm just able to go and view the fact that the registration was completed. I do have the ability and permission right now to see the financial data, so I can see a receipt. I can also view the registration data and policies. These are two important things for a governing body or whoever your overarching governing body is. It's important to be able to see this information from time to time. In particular, and unfortunately, usually it's because of some type of dispute or an insurance investigation, that kind of thing. So being able to view the registration data that was provided at the time of the registration, that is really important. So what this is going to do is show us when they submitted the registration form, this is all they provided. And if they didn't fill in an answer, then that answer would be blank because not all of these would have been required. So we can see exactly what information was provided. We can also see that, yes, they did give consent, and it provides an exact date and time stamp of the consent they provided. We also provide the ability for you to view the registration policies that were consented to at the time of the registration. And the benefit there is, again, when you have to go back and just double check on how that registration, maybe it's an issue with a policy not being clearly labeled or written out properly. Is this showing up on the bottom of the page here for me? But the policies are available to view. I'm just going to show it over here when we were looking at this one. So viewing the registration policies, yeah, I'll talk to our product folks about that. So what this does is it lets us show exactly what was in the content of each of those required waiver policies at the time that it was registered. So for example, if you were to register today and then tomorrow someone was to update one of these policies, the registration data available here is going to reflect what they agreed to at the time and not the new policy, because that policy would not have been in place on the date and time of this registration. So registration tie-ins are really great to be able to view the registration activity of the organizations that fall beneath you, and you have the ability to publish master policies that should apply on every single registration form that happens within on an association or club within your purview, so that everyone is agreeing to all the right things. If you're a hockey organization here right now, there's some really exciting stuff coming with respect to this registration tie-in that might be really exciting, because we are in the process of integrating with Hockey Canada's registration system. So using Goalline's registration system as a centralized assigning system and a registration system, you're able to share all those policies and provide that same information that Hockey Canada is going to require within your Goalline network. And it's just going to remove a whole lot of layers there. So you can already see there's a lot of layers removed when we have these tie-ins in place, just for the administrative burden of providing reports of, registration numbers and things like that, because the governing body within the Goalline network is able to report on all of that all by themselves. Another way to demonstrate that is that not only can I do a registration search on the associations that are below me here, but I can restrict all of my other criteria based on those same organizations as well. So if I don't really care so much about the registration data, I'll just leave that blank here. I don't really want to do that. Let's just look over here, and I can search for excuse me, Trevor Scott's Goalline demo, and all of the criteria that I apply is going to apply to just Trevor Scott's Goalline demo. And when I go ahead and search those players, I'll probably get a few more than 4, because there's more than 4 players in that system, but only 4 have registered. So this is going to provide me all of the players that exist in Trevor Scott's demo site. And I can view all of that information the same way as I could with the registration search. And it also provides me with those same options to be able to email and export the information, so that I can just be a governing body and do that administrative work in that sense, to make sure that a player is properly registered. If there's ever a complaint or a question that comes up from a game situation, oftentimes there are questions regarding call-ups or affiliate players that are called up to play in games that on a team that's not their regular team. So the governing body just has immediate access to view, yes, this player exists in that association, and yes, they were properly registered for the season, and they don't have to go and do a whole lot of legwork and find out from a club registrar whether or not that player was registered. So a lot of streamlined administrative stuff can go on there with the registration tie-in. The last type of tie-in we're going to talk about today is the team tie-in for the purpose of schedules. And this one's really fun. It's definitely one of the longest running types of tie-ins that Goalline has offered. And the way that this works is it will push roster information back and forth, and it will push schedule information and stats information. So the association, the club that has the rep team, is able to tie in so that they don't have to add the league schedule to their rep team schedule on their Goalline site. If you're both using Goalline, no one has to enter that schedule twice. The schedule can get entered once, and as soon as it's entered and the tie-ins there, your schedule will show you your team's games regardless of whether you're looking at the league site or your club site. So I'm going to walk through a quick demonstration of that. And before I get started, I'm going to say there are two ways for the rosters to exist. And this is probably the most important factor when deciding how to do a team tie-in using the Goalline site. And sometimes it depends on how you've done things historically, and other times it might depend on how would you love to do it if you could do it differently, which is one of the things that I love discussing with folks, is just how can we make this work more efficiently for you. So the roster can either live on the club site or on the league site. And the difference is basically, like I just said, it's whether or not they register directly with the club and form a team at the club and then have to submit a roster to the league, or do they have to register directly with the league and the roster already exists on the league site? So that really is the only difference, is where are you putting the roster? And I'm going to show you, kind of walk through how this all works. The tie-in does need to be requested. And again, it's a permission on both sides thing before we enable it. But once we enable it, you are able to do that tie-in on your own. Back in when I first started working at Goalline, tie-ins had to be done by the support team, which was pretty hefty work at the beginning of a season. But now you're able to do that yourself, and you don't have to untie your teams. As long as your teams are fairly consistent and the league is fairly consistent from season to season, you probably need to go and double check your team tie-ins, but you often don't have to redo anything from scratch. So we're going to take a look here at team tie-ins, and I'm going to go to my women's league first, because the first thing that needs to happen is the league or the team needs to be somewhere on my site. Because if I'm the league creating the schedule, so my women's league, we're the ones that run the schedule, and all of the teams that exist within my women's league, they may or may not have their own Goalline site elsewhere. They might not have a website at all, and they just rely on my site for their schedule, whatever the case may be. But all of these teams are the teams that exist in my division. I'm going to go and add a new team over here. And I'm going to do that by selecting Manage Teams. This adds a team to just my one league here. And I'm going to add a Nova Scotia U18 team over here. So I'm just going to add that one team. And because I don't need to wait for their roster or anything, I'm going to go and create a game for them right away. So I'll create a game over here for our NSU18. They're going to play the Blizzard. They're going to play at Cole Harbor Place. And they're going to play tonight at 8 o'clock. So I'm going to create that game here. I could email that out if I want to. I'm just going to create the game. So now we've got a game ready. That Nova Scotia U18 game is scheduled. Trevor is the one that owns that U18 team. So this girls U18 team, they don't have a game on their schedule just yet. If I go and look for teams, it's this girls U18 here. Nothing's on their schedule right now because they're not tied in yet, but they are available to tie in. So when Trevor logs in, he's going to look for the Manage Tie-ins tool. And that's going to be found in the schedule section. So Manage Tie-ins. When he goes to Manage Tie-ins, all of his rep teams, which are just the teams that appear over here, have the option to be tied in somewhere. The boys don't have anywhere to be tied in, so I'm not going to tie them in at all, but I am going to look here. So the organization I want to tie in with is going to be the Northeast Athletic Officials Association, and then the division that they're part of is the Women's Hurricane Inlet League. So I'm going to look for that and find that one. And then I'm going to find my team in here. So I'm on a Nova Scotia site. So my team's just called Girls U18, but on the league site, they called them NS U18. So I'm going to say this team is in this league, in this division, and it's called this over here. So I'm going to save that tie-in. And as we're looking here, you can see the type of tie-in. It shows you what type of tie-in you have. So this is saying that the information is stored on the association, which means the roster is here. The schedule is over here, but the roster is here. So now that we've got that tie-in, let's take a look at, let's see here if I just refresh. We should have the schedule coming up here. Team schedule. Now we see that the game I scheduled on my Goalline site, a separate Goalline site, is now showing up available here for them to see on their schedule. So when they go to subscribe to the season schedule, it will include any of the association-wide events, any practices, anything that's been scheduled directly here, in addition to the games that have been scheduled by the league that I've been tied into. So huge benefit to your participants so that they can look in one place to see their entire schedule. They don't have to hop back and forth. And as a sport parent myself, I've got 2 kids active in multiple sports, and I'm often having to look in one place for their practice schedule and a different place for their league schedule. And that's a little bit cumbersome. And you're bound to forget about something or have last minute mix-ups and things like that. So this allows for a really streamlined experience from the player and the parent perspective. And it also makes it easier because you don't have to worry as an association about keeping up with the league schedule if you did want to try and maintain this your own Goalline schedule for all of your teams. What you might find as well, and this is really common, is if you're an association, you might have 5 or 6 different rep teams, but they might not all play in the same league. Where I live here in Nova Scotia, that's pretty common because if you have teams that are in the C level, the B level, and the A to AAA level, and even let's say beyond, maybe you have even a junior team as well, a junior B or a junior A team. All of those organizations are run separately. So you've got up to 4 or 5 completely different leagues that your teams participate in. So when you have the ability to create the team tie-in that pushes your schedule, your roster to those leagues and pushes their schedule to your site is now the truth for everything. The source of truth is going to be down to one central place instead of having to go and look at multiple sites all the time to make sure that you're catching everything. It also allows for that internal communication so that you can view the games when they're creating and scheduling games and they go to email, that's going to email through to the coaching staff, at least of the teams that are participating in those games. So the team tie-in is done through we have to have permission, and once we make it available, you can tie into those organizations you have permission to tie into. You can only tie one team in to one place. So if you have a distinct indoor outdoor version of a team and they're run by different leagues or they're different divisions on the league site, you're going to want to break out and have 2 separate teams representing that. In particular, that's going to happen a lot when there's overlap between seasons, and they really should be treated as completely different teams. So just to put that out there as well. So now when it comes to reporting that game, I don't know if there's a roster on here, but when it comes to reporting that game and I go to the statistics section of my site, I can report games from the schedule that I have, and it will populate the rosters. I don't have rosters over here, but it will populate the rosters there for me so that I can report the game with the individual player statistics. Another benefit that I've seen over the years that a lot of folks do enjoy is if your league doesn't report individual statistics, but you as an association would like to report individual statistics, then you're now able to go do that. You're able to go and report your own individual stats for the games that have been scheduled for your team on your own site so that your team's stats show up on your site, but it doesn't have any effect or impact whatsoever on what the league has chosen to display. So that's often a point of contention when it comes to reporting full statistics for some divisions, but not all age groups and not all skill levels. So if you want, as an association, to report those stats, you do have the ability to do so. There is a little bit of control that the league does have on whether or not you're allowed to do that, and oftentimes that's really just to continue and respect the fact that these leagues and associations have policies of their own. So if they're going to allow you to tie in, they are going to make a determination on whether or not you could report your own individual stats. If you were doing your own individual stats, you are only doing your team, regardless of which team you played against. You will never be able to report the individual stats for a team that is not one of your own association teams when you're using this type of tie-in. So again, it really just kind of controls things and makes sure that you're not able to step on the toes of anybody else within your association or within your region, and whether or not you're pushing games to a referee site or not, all those games are going to end up where they need to be. Rosters can exist on either the league or the association. They can exist on both, but only one will be the truth when it comes to the roster displayed on the website. Schedule information will push to your club site, and statistics information will also push to your club site with results information. Your club site will have a limited view of statistics information when it comes to the game reporting, because it will not display full rosters for your opposing teams, because those full rosters do exist on the league site. So just to kind of make sure that we've got all that out there. So networking goal line sites, there's three really big buckets of types of networking that you can do with goal line sites. A huge benefit mainly to the end users. So if I think about the end users of goal lines, the goal line system, it is the players and parents, it is the officials, and it's also the official assigners, and it's also the schedulers and the statisticians, not to mention, of course, the registrars and folks who have to oversee policies and things like that. So there are lots of benefits to the different types of tie-ins available on the Goal Line platform. If you as an association or a league find that a lot of your neighboring associations in your sport are also using Goal Line, it is certainly something to talk about, and you can reach out to us to get started with those conversations, and we can find the right way to time it and the right way to help you get that implemented so that it's really nice and easy for everybody involved. So that actually covers today's webinar, and I'm pretty proud of myself because I often say I'm going to try to end quick, and I never do. So I didn't say it out loud earlier, and I managed to finish a little bit early. If there are any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat, but I also really encourage you to reach out to the support team if you do have any specific questions and discussions about your organization and what the best options are for you. If you're watching this recording later on, or if you're watching this on YouTube, these options are definitely available. Reach out and find out how we can help you out. Thanks so much for your time, everybody. Really appreciate it this afternoon, and appreciate you if you're sitting there sipping a tea or a coffee later on and watching the replay here. Great question, Jenny. So Jenny just asked, where can you watch the recording? As soon as this webinar ends, within a few minutes, you will receive an email from the Livestorm tool that I use to put on the webinar. That's one way for you to access the recording. I also try to put up our each recording onto the Goal Line YouTube channel, usually by the end of the week. If I don't do it by tomorrow, I'll try to do it by the end of the week. So the Goal Line YouTube channel, if I just go, let's just make sure that we're looking at the same thing here. So YouTube, and just look for Goal Line. My computer's a little slow today. So Goalline, we've got a channel here. It should, just to make sure that you know what it looks like. So this is what it should look like here. And you can see here, we've got almost all of our webinar series that we've been putting on since about 2020, mid 2020 or so. We've been putting on these webinars. So any topic that you're interested in, check out that Goalline YouTube channel, and you can probably find a pre-recorded webinar about it. And if there's any further questions, go ahead and reach out to support, and be on the lookout for our next webinar invitation for a couple of weeks from now. Thanks so much, guys. Have a wonderful day.